Morning, Nada. Can we start? Okay, yeah. You here with us? Mm. We are waiting for the speaker. Betul? Can you hear me? Mm. Morning. Morning to all the participants. Thank you for joining us this morning for another session for Tasha Nasmina. As I'm
Agak
meeting others.
suara agak perlahan ya.
Yes, saya. Okay dah.
A bit soft.
Ah, tak
Am
apa,
I
sorry.
clear? Am I loud?
Yes, you
Okay,
are
all
very
right.
clear. Okay, shall we start, okay?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Thank you joining us this morning. Thank you again for the Associate Professor Chen Meiyut. On behalf of our Prasanna program, I would like to extend my sincere appreciation to all the participants and to our speaker today. Like every other session, it is my pleasure to introduce our distinguished speaker for today. We have Associate Professor Dr. Chen Meiyut. Dr. Chan obtained her PhD in Applied Linguistics from the UM, also holds a Master of Science in Human Resource Development from UPM and Bachelor of Arts in Education with double majors in English Language and Mathematics from USM. Throughout her academic career, Dr. Chan Meiyut has conducted extensive research using both quantitative and qualitative methodologies. She has published numerous articles in national and international journals, particularly in area of discourse and communication language for specific purpose and language acquisition. In addition to her research achievement, Dr. Chamley plays an important role in research ethics governance at UPM. She is currently a member of the main board of the UPM Ethics Committee and previously served as a chair of the Social Science Ethics Subcommittee. She is also a member of Post-Approval Subcommittee. Throughout her years of service on UPM Ethics Committee, she has gained extensive experience and a deep understanding of the challenge faced by students, supervisor, and researcher in obtaining ethical approval and addressing ethical issues in studies involving human participants. We are indeed privileged to have her with us today, Dr. To share her expertise and practical insight on this important topic. Without further ado, the floor is yours, Dr. Can we start the session? Thank you so much, Dr.
Yeah. Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Arif. Thank you for the School of Graduate Studies for inviting me to give this talk. And this is the third time I'm giving a talk for SGS in the Putra Sarjana series of talk for graduate students. Okay, thank you, Mr. Arif, and I think we shall just continue. Go ahead with the talk, yeah? All right, thank you, and welcome to everyone. Thank you for coming to this talk. Okay, so as what Mr. Arif has said just now in the introduction, I'm a lecturer at the Faculty of Modern Languages and Communication in UPM. All right, so I've been a member of the JKE UPM. I'm sure you are familiar with this when you submitted your ethics application, right? That is the UPM Ethics Committee, right? So in this talk, I will try to help you as much as possible to give you information, right? To understand what is this all about, what is ethics in research is all about, and how you can manage your application for approval, right? For ethics approval. Okay, now let me share my slide first, yeah? Thanks. Okay. All right, can you all see the slides?
Yes, okay.
Okay, all right. So during the talk, right, I don't mind any interaction. If you have any question that you want to ask, if you have a quick question, right, you can just turn on your mic and ask me, all right? In case you forget at the end of the talk, you forget what you want to ask. So if it's a quick question along the way, feel free to ask, all right? So just let me clarify first. We are talking about ethics of research involving human subjects. So specifically, for research that involve human subjects, and there needs to be a protection for human subjects, and that is why we have this ethics. It is not ethics in research in general. Okay, so just to get this straightened out, ethics in research, there are many, many things there. It includes, things like modifying your data, things like that. These are unethical, right? But here in this talk, I am only going to talk about ethics involving human subjects, where human subjects are involved. Okay, not ethics in research as a whole. Okay, all right. So this is a Putra Sarjana talk. All right. So I think many of you would have been told by your supervisor to apply for ethical approval before you do your research, right? Okay, especially if your research involves human subjects. And sometimes when you submit your article for publication to a journal, there will be a question popping up in your submission. The question asks, has your research obtained approval from your IRB? They use the term IRB. IRB means Institutional Review Board. What it means is actually the Ethics Review Board or Ethics Committee or whatever they call it. In UPM, we call it Ethics Committee, and it's called JKA UPM, right? So Institutional Review Board. So without this, you can't get your article published in the journal. So this is why from the very beginning, when you do your research, you should already apply for ethical approval before you start your research. Do not wait until the end when you want to publish your article, and then you realize that you can't publish because you haven't got ethical approval. And journals require it. Okay, and by that time, if you try to apply for ethical approval from JKA UPM, you won't get it because approval can only be given before you start your research, not after. Yeah, so this has to be known to all students. Do it at the beginning. Okay, and then we also encounter during, in our meetings at the university level, we also found that some students had problems during the viva with their examiners. Right? Some examiners suddenly ask during the viva or during the thesis examination in the report, suddenly you see a question from the examiner, has this research obtained ethical approval? And the student hasn't got it, right? So if you are very unfortunate, the examiner will say, I'm sorry, I will give you a resubmission. I won't pass you because you haven't got what do you call it? Ethical approval. All right. I'm not going to say that this is right or wrong. Okay. From our point of view, right? Thesis examination and ethical approval, they are two separate things. They are separate, right? So it's not because you do not have ethical approval and therefore you will fail your thesis on your viva. It shouldn't be that way, but some examiners look at it that way. And so that is the issue that you as a student, if you are unfortunately involved in this kind of problem, you have to resolve it with SGS and the examiners to come to a conclusion, because there is no way you can get ethical approval at that point, because your research is already completed and you're already attending your viva. So there is no way you can come back to ethics committee and ask for approval at the time. And then you say, oh, my examiner say I must have it, but we can't give it to you because it's already completed. You understand? Okay, so that's something that, is a problem arising from this matter, right? So to avoid all these things, it's advisable for you to apply for ethical approval before you start your research, if your research involves human subjects. Okay, so just to talk about what JKE UPM here, UPM here doesn't refer to University Putra Malaysia, okay? This is an acronym for Jawatan Kuasa Etika Universiti untuk Penyelidikan Melibatkan Manusia. So it's J, K, E, U, P, and M. All right, so most people say UPM is University Putra. Never mind. This is the name of our ethics committee. All right. Okay, so to start off, what is research involving human subjects? What does it mean? Okay, before I start, I want to know how many of you are social science and humanities researchers? And how many of you do research involving human subjects? Okay, let's have a show of hands. How many of you, how do I open participants? Okay, how many of you do research in social science and humanities? I assume all of you will do, right? Otherwise, you won't be here. And how many of you do research involving human subjects? Now, this is very important because if you don't do research, if your research doesn't involve human subjects, then actually you do not need ethical approval. Okay, but you can still apply for exemption just to be sure, right? Of course, you can say, I don't want to apply because my research doesn't involve any humans. Okay, that is fine. So, but when you write an article and submit to a journal, there will be a question there, right? Did you get ethical approval? If you didn't get it, then please explain why. So you can explain that your research does not involve human subjects, and hope that the journals accept it, hoping that, whatever you say is actually right, okay? But if sometimes you're not sure, you thought it doesn't involve human subjects, but actually it does. Okay, so to be sure, you can apply to GKE UPM and ask for exemption. Okay, exemption means you are exempted from getting ethical approval for your research. All right, so what do we mean when we say you are doing research involving human subjects? Okay, for example, is this research involving human subjects? Let's try to ask ourselves, right? Now you sit in a bus and you overhear and record conversations among passengers. Okay, so let's say you are sitting here, and then you overhear these two people talking, okay? And then you record the conversation, because your research is about, let's say, social conversation in a place like a bus, for example. Okay? Or maybe you are doing a political societal research and something happened in the country and everyone is talking about that event, some political event or whatever. Everyone is talking about it. And you want to do a research, social science, right? You want to do a research to capture what people in the bus are talking about, okay? About that event, for example, right? So you sit in the bus and then you hear people all talking excitedly about that event, and then you want to record. Okay? So is this kind of research involving human subjects? And do you need to apply for ethical approval? Okay? Right. Another example is, this is very common for linguistics research. where the researcher invites someone called an informant, a language informant. For example, this researcher wants to do research on Iban language, and he doesn't speak Iban language, right? So he wants to look at the Iban grammar. So he has to invite someone who knows how to speak Iban language. And then he will ask that person to read a few words or sentences in Iban so that he can analyze the grammar. So is this research involving human subjects? Do you need to get ethical approval? Okay. Well, you're just asking that person to read a list of words or to read out a list of sentences, and then you just record it, and that's it. You're not conducting an interview or anything, right? Okay. So do you need to get ethical approval? Of course, the answer is yes, right? Because it involves human subject, right? What about this? Okay, you ask students in a school to complete a task on a computer, right? For whatever reason or objective of your research, you have some kind of task in a computer, and then you go to a school and you want the students to complete the task, the test or whatever activity on the computer, and then you want to do a pre and post test, you want to see how effective it is, and so on and so on. So is this involving human subject? The student here, of course, it involves human subject, so you have to get ethical approval. All right, and some student researchers, they do online survey. They say, okay, I just put the survey online in Google Form. Okay, and then I send the link for the survey in my social media to all kinds of groups and invite people to go to the link and answer my survey question. But I don't talk to them directly. I don't interview them. They just do it anonymously wherever they are. They can answer my survey question online in any country or any state, any place, and it can be anonymous. That means I don't ask them to put in their names. So do I need to get ethical approval? Do you need to? You have to, because it involves human subjects, right? Because the human subjects are being invited to answer your questionnaire. So they are having contact with your questionnaire, your research. So this means you have to get ethical approval. Okay? Right. So some people work on not just students, on people in organizations like workers. Okay, so you go to a public organization and then you want to interview the workers there and ask the workers about integrity issues. Okay, can you tell me about integrity issues in your organization? What do you think? What's your perspective? This interview, right? Okay, does this involve human subject? Of course, right? Okay, so for this kind of research, definitely, there's no doubt about it, you need to get ethical approval, right? Okay, what about this one? And especially for researchers doing literature, right, in the humanities, where not just literature, sorry, this is not literature, it can be literature. This is actually what we call it corpus linguistics, right? This is a corpus. A corpus is a collection of texts, existing collection of texts. Collected by who? Collected by some past researchers, right? Okay, so there are millions of words, 450 million of words collected from 1990 to 2012. This collection of texts are publicly available for researchers. Any researchers who want to use the text from here to do their research, they are allowed to use it with the permission of the owner of the corpus. So you just download the text that you want from this database, and then you do your analysis on the text. Similarly, like for if you are a researcher on a history, for example, you go and look at traditional and historical manuscripts from the library, right? Ancient manuscripts, and then you analyze the text. Okay, so do you need to get approval from from the ethics committee? You're analyzing the archive text. Okay, for this one, actually, you don't need to, because there is no human involved. It's only the text. You just download the text, right, from somewhere, from newspaper or from the existing database, and then you analyze the text. So there is no ethical issue involved regarding human subjects. But it doesn't mean that there is no copyright issue, right? Who is the owner of this text? Who is the owner of the database? You still need to get permission from them. So that is copyright and so on regarding the owner. But that is not ethics involving human subjects. because there is no human subject involved in this research. You understand? Okay, so there are two different things. You don't have to get ethical approval. It doesn't mean that you can just use anything online without getting permission from the owner. Yeah, that is a different thing altogether. Okay, this is some for literature students, right? Students are asked to read some classical books, stories, novels, and so on, and then they have to analyze the stories, analyze some concepts or whatever, written by well-known writers. Okay, so do you need to get ethical approval to do this? Do you think so? Is there any contact with human subjects? There's no contact, right? It's just a text, right? Okay, so for this, you don't need to, but you can, as I said, you can apply to JKA UPM to ask for exemption. If you want to have that exemption letter just to protect yourself, you can, right? Okay, so there's no human subjects involved for this kind of research. But as a literature researcher, some researchers do the research like this. It depends on your research design, yeah? They want to obtain reactions from a group of literature students after reading a novel. So let us say you choose this book, this novel, right, by a famous writer. Okay? Stage one, you analyze the story based on certain concepts. So for this part, there is no human subject, so there is no ethical issue involved. But then you have a second part to your research. Okay, and the second part is you ask some people to read the story, and then after that, you want to obtain their reaction. Okay, you say, please read this, and then I want to know your reaction, your perspective on whatever, based on whatever concept. For this, you need to get ethical approval because you are asking someone to read the story and give their perspective, and that someone is a human. Okay, so that means it involves human subject. Okay, so if you're a researcher in the field of literature, it depends, of course, on how you design your research, whether there is involvement of human subjects. Then you have to decide whether you need to apply for ethical approval. Okay? All right, so it looks like social science and humanities research often involve human subjects in one way or another, not just the medical research, yeah? Of course, we know this talk is about social sciences and humanities research, yeah? Because if you want to talk about medical research and clinical research, there's a lot more things which you need to discuss, to talk about, because the nature of the research is different. So the ethical issues, they do overlap, but they are also different. So you need another talk, yeah? Mr. Arif, you want to talk, you want to give a talk, you want to give a talk about medical research, clinical research, and science and technology research. You need to invite another person to come and give the talk because we can't cover all of this. Okay? So do we need to apply for ethical approval to conduct research? So some students or some researchers, especially in the social sciences, they say, no need because there's no harm. So what if I don't get ethical approval, right? What does it matter if I just interview someone and ask the person for their opinion on something? Okay, I just interview you, right? Can you be my subject? I interview you, and I want to get your opinion on certain concept, right? So why do I need to get ethical approval? Because there's no harm is going to come to the subject. It's not like medical research where I give you some medication, and if the medication is wrong and the person can die, right? It can cause a lot of harm to the patient in medical research, and so on. But in social science and humanities, many people think there is no need because there is no harm. There's no harm. Okay, so do you think so? Do you think that there is no harm, therefore it is not crucial or not important to have ethical research for social sciences and the humanities? Okay, so let us talk about where the harm can come from. Okay, whether there is any harm. Okay, just one example. Right. A researcher, these are hypothetical as well as reformulated from actual research that has been submitted because it's confidential. So whatever I'm presenting here have already been modified, yeah, but the principle is the same. Okay? So a researcher interviewing a group of sex workers. Sex workers here is the politically correct term to use. For previously, we will say prostitutes, right? But that is not correct. Okay, not socially correct. We do not want to discriminate, so we call them sex workers. All right? In a specific site, in a specific place, okay? Right, so you have interviewed them, and you got all the data, and you got your research, and then you want to publish your research, right? So for this kind of research, sociology, so in sociology and anthropology, right? To be convincing, qualitative type of research. A lot of times you will see in the publication, there will be pictures, there'll be photographs. Not photograph of the subject, of course, because you cannot reveal the identity of the subject, but they will photograph the place. Okay, this is the place, for example, this is the building or whatever. They will have photographs, right, to be more specific and to get the attention of the reader, right, that this is the place. So you want to publish the photograph of the research location. Okay, for example, Sri Kembangan next to UPM, right? And then you want to also publish the interview transcript. Okay, and a lot of times students are told in qualitative research, you have to show the transcript. Transcript means the exact, what do you call it? The oral interview that is written down. You write it, put it in writing. That is called the transcript, right? To show to actually so that the reader can actually see the context of what is being said in the interview transcript itself. So they can refer to the transcript and say, oh, the respondent said this, they said that, and so on. Okay, so sometimes they add the entire transcript in the appendix. Whereas in the thesis or in the body of the publication, they put extract only short excerpts. But sometimes they include the entire transcript at back as appendix. Okay, right? And the sex workers, they were talking about their lived experiences, yeah? So they put in all this. So it seems well and good, right? But are there any ethical issues? Do you think there is any ethical issue here? Do you think there is any problem? Because you're telling me that you are not revealing their identity, right? I don't reveal their identity, so nobody knows who they are, right? We're just revealing what they say. Okay, we will just say respondent one, respondent two, or we use pseudonyms. That means you change the name, Anna or Lily. Okay, these are not their real names. Okay, so are there any ethical issues? Because you will think that there's no harm. Okay, and then you want to publish the photograph of the research location, the place, and things that they do, but of course without showing the person. Okay, all right, so you show the picture, for example. Oh, okay, this is a red light district in Kuala Lumpur. Okay, this is the building, this is where it happened, for example. Okay, this is the red light district. So you want to have all these pictures in your publication, whether it's journal article or whether it's your book. You know, when you read books, sometimes you want to see, as a reader, you want to see the pictures, right? You want so that you can really get involved and really understand what the researcher has found. Okay, is there any issue here? If you're looking from your researcher's point of view, you will say this is very good, right? The more specific, the better it is, because this is what you want. But from the respondent's point of view, for ethics committee, we have to look at this from the respondent's point of view, not just the researcher's point of view, because the existence of ethics is basically to protect the respondent, protect the participants of research so that they are not disadvantaged or harmed in any way. Okay, so if you look at this one, okay, look at the person here, suddenly you look, aha, if you zoom in on this, okay, of course, this is just a hypothetical one, yeah, it's not a real one. So for example, you took a picture and then suddenly somebody zoom in on this person and say, hey, this looks like my friend, okay? All right, does this look like your friend, right? Or this car here, okay, there's a car here, I can look at this, I can see the car number. Oh, this belongs to somebody I know, right? Now, this is not a harm to the participant. This is a harm to the non-participants. Okay, the participants are the sex workers whom you interviewed. So these people are not the sex workers, right? The sex workers are maybe here. But of course, if you show their faces, then again, this is unethical because they can be identified. Okay, so even the non-participants, surrounding people, if you are not careful, there will be somebody there who is recognized by someone, and there is harm to that person because the reputation will be harmed. right? That this person is found in a red light district in front of the building where everybody knows that prostitution happens here and your car is parked here. So you have to be very careful when you do this. Okay, and it's not only that. Okay, not only to the non-participant. What about harm to the participants? Because you say you do not reveal their identity, right? Okay, so the ethical issue here, the identities of the subjects may be anonymized. That means you don't reveal the names, but the details of the interview in the transcript may contain information such as the specific location of the subject's activities and the language orienting to specific dialect groups, ethnicities, or nationalities. So in the transcript, interview transcript, you're actually writing down exactly what is said. So sometimes they will use their own language or dialect. For example, they speak Malay and then they mix with Kelantan Malay or Johor Malay. Or if it's Chinese, right, they speak English and then they mix with a Chinese dialect like Hokkien or Cantonese. Okay, and this will definitely show their ethnicity, that they are Chinese or they are Malay, whatever, it will show. Okay, and if they are speaking Russian or some other German language, then it will also show the nationality. All right, and the specific location, even though you don't mention, okay, it is in Sri Kembangan or what, you don't mention it, but from the picture, you can, people who know the place will straight away identify this place. Okay, they will know, oh, I know where this is. Okay, so what's going to happen here when this is published or publicized or known to the public? You have to understand what harm can come to your subjects. Prostitution, you know, in Malaysia is illegal. Now, if you are doing your research in a country where prostitution is legal, it doesn't matter so much. Of course, morally, there will still be some harm. But here in Malaysia, it is worse because it is illegal. So that means the next day, you can see some police, okay, somebody will viral this on YouTube or whatever, right, on social media, and then the police will see this, and then the next day they will come and raid the place, and then they will catch all the sex workers and put them in jail. Okay, so what does this mean? Where is the ethics of your research? It's because of your research and your action that these people got caught and they are arrested and put in jail. Are you happy about this? Of course, please don't tell me you're happy, right? Okay, don't say I'm happy because I don't like prostitution. I want them to be in jail. If that's the case, then you don't do this research. Okay, because when you interview them, when you ask them to be your respondents, you have the moral responsibility to protect them. Okay, it is based on trust that they tell you their life story, that they even come and talk to you is based on trust. And here you are causing something like that to happen to them. So we cannot allow this to happen, right? So you cannot publish all these things and to show indirectly you are actually revealing the identity, even though in the ethics protocol, you write down clearly in the proposal to us that you send to JKE UPM, you write down very clearly, I will not reveal the identity of the participants. But you don't understand, if you reveal the transcript and the transcript actually show all these things, right? The participants can get into trouble because first of all, they are doing illegal activity and they can get arrested by the authorities anytime. So you are endangering them. So knowing this, you cannot reveal anything that can point to that location or the group identity, not the individual identity, yes, but even the group identity should not be pointed at. Right? So this is a very important thing when we talk about ethics to protect your participants. All right? So that is one thing. Harm of being arrested for their activities. Okay? And next thing is also the subjects may experience psychological distress if there are traumatic life experiences that they have to recall when answering the researchers' questions. Okay, we assume that people do not go into this kind of work if they don't have to, right? So some of them are in this kind of work because of personal issues, right? Problems, traumatic life, and so on. That is why they are doing this. So when you ask them to talk about their life experiences, they have to recall all the bad things that happen in their life and things like that, and they can become depressed, they can become psychologically distressed. So this is the harm of your research to your participants. Okay, so there is harm. When you ask them to talk about their problems, why they ended up in prostitution, for example, and they have traumas in their life. Maybe they experience abuse at home, things like that. So they feel psychologically distressed, and they may suffer from depression. So what is the cause of it? The cause is caused by you and your research. So that is the unethical part. So when you submit such a proposal, we will also ask you, what mechanisms have you put in place to mitigate the harm arising from this research? So if your participants feel distressed and depressed, of course they will, what are you doing to make sure that no harm comes to them? Are you going to prepare counseling service? Right? Are you going to tell them, okay, if you feel uncomfortable, you can stop answering the question, or you can go to this place, right, for free counseling. I give you the phone number and you can make appointment, or I can help you to make an appointment, and so on. And if the counseling service has to be paid, who is going to pay for it? All right, so all of these things have to be written down clearly before we accept your proposal to do this kind of research. So you cannot just go in and do research and get what you want without considering the harm you will cause to the participant. So this is called the violation of the safety principle, where the principle is the research must not compromise the safety and welfare of research subjects. And of course, as well as non-subjects, like, the friend who happened to be standing around there, for example. So you need to be careful, aware of all these things. All right? Okay, are you okay? I hope I'm not talking to myself. All right.
There's a question in the chat box.
There's a question in the chat box. Okay, where do I look at the chat box here?
Hmm.
Just ask my question here.
Jennifer.
Can you hear me? Hi.
Oh, mana question dia? Yes.
Hi, doctor. Or maybe I just call.
Indirect human subject
ask
can
the
be
question
excluded
here.
for ethics. Not indirect human subject. There is human subject or there is no human subject. Okay, so if you have no human subject, then you don't have to. It's not called indirect human subject, yeah? Those other humans involved where you need to get permission from them because they are the owner of the database, those are not human subjects. They are humans, but they are not your subjects. It means you are not doing research on them. Okay? Subjects means you're doing research, yeah, on them. Okay. Well, copyright permission will be, of course, this is not within our purview. This is related to copyright. Okay, so you cannot simply take anybody's things and use it without their permission unless they say you can, yeah. So that's different, right? Kept anonymous. What are the precautions we should consider? We need to include, if you really need to include photos, okay? Of course, you have to make sure that the faces cannot be seen, okay? But that is only the individual identity of that individual. But like I said, it's also the location and all that. Now, in some research, the location doesn't matter. Even if you see the location of the place, it doesn't matter. What matter is that the individual's identity cannot be shown. So if you have a group photo, you have to put something to cover the face. I know in technology, you have, that kind of bubble, where you can cover the face of the person, right? Or take from the angle where the face cannot be seen directly, so you cannot recognize the person, okay? But the research which I mentioned just now, the prostitution one, the location also should not be shown because you know how the police operate. This is where, when you are a researcher, you should know everything about the topic, yeah? You cannot just know one small thing about it. You have to know everything, right? For, prostitution is illegal in Malaysia. But of course, it's happening. It happens, right? But for the police, they will just close their eyes if it is not something which is like so dominant, or which is not, if it is not something which is so clear or demonstrated outright to the whole world to see. If it's not viral, for example. If it's done quietly, sometimes they just close their eyes because these things happen all the time and they just couldn't stop it. You stop this one, it will appear another place, right? But if somebody virals it, or if somebody says they're having a huge party, a big party for where there is prostitution and drugs and so on, of course the police will go there. So it is a matter of the extent of activity. So if the extent of the activity is small and not publicized, or not many people know about it or complain about it, they just close their eye. But if it is something that is known to the public and people start talking about it, and the activity level is quite high, then the police will definitely go and they will take action. This is how they work. So if you do your research and then you publicize it, right, by showing all the pictures of the location, and everybody talks about it. Oh yeah, that somebody did a research on this, and then okay, this is the location. Okay, so it's already in public, and everybody in social media is talking about it, and the police know about it. Once they know about it, they cannot close their eyes. They have to take action. So you will see that the group of people who obliged to participate in your research, suddenly they are arrested. So you cannot have that happen to them because of you. You know, the understanding is if they are caught on their own, it's not your business, but they are caught because of you, because you ask them to do research, to join your research, and then you publicize the location and people know about it. Even though you didn't show their identity, but you show the location, which is what the police will take. They will just go to that location and arrest everyone there. Okay, so you must know when you go into a certain type of research, a topic, you have to know everything about it. You cannot be ignorant, yeah? Okay. So what precautions? It depends on the type of research. If you're talking about psychological distress, you have to prepare psychological services like counseling or whatever to make sure that if they have a psychological problem, they need counseling, they must be able to get it. Otherwise, what's happening to them? Suddenly they feel depressed, but because of your research, and how are you helping them? So precautions depend on what the risks are, depending on the risk. Okay? All right. Anything else? Any more questions here? Okay, no more, right? Okay. Right, so there are many principles. If you look under ethics in research, there are many things you can find, all right, written on this, right? But I just summarize it into 3 main points for human subjects. Ethical research, respect for person. Number 1 is respect for person. As a researcher, you have to respect the person, the subject that you are, your subjects that you are investigating, that you are using. Don't use people and then just shut them away. You have to respect them, okay? Because there are some, right? Like for example, the prostitution one, right? If you think badly of them, if you think prostitutes are really bad, okay? They are the scum of society. We don't want them at all. Then you shouldn't be doing your research on them where you ask them to talk about their life to you. Why are you asking them to talk about their life? Okay? If you want to ask them to talk about your life, it's because you respect them, and right, you want to find out what are the kind of things that they have gone through, and you have certain things to investigate, which will bring what benefit to the group as well as society. But if your stance is that these are all bad people, then you shouldn't be doing research on them, because then you wouldn't care what happened to them, right? If they are caught by the police, you will feel happy, right? So you shouldn't be doing it because you're not respecting them, right? So give the subject the chance to give consent as autonomous agent after receiving full information about the research. So you have to tell the subject what your research is about, what you intend to do with it, and they must know fully before they give the consent. So this is respect for them, okay? And vulnerable persons must be given protection. So if the person is vulnerable, you have to give protection to them. Okay, it's like for example, some researchers interview people who are in the drug rehabilitation center. Drug rehabilitation, all right? They go in because they are drug addicts, and then they want to talk to them, right? So they are vulnerable, right? So you have to make sure that they are not going to be discriminated and so on when you do your research. What kind of protection are you going to give them? Participation must be voluntary. Voluntary means without inducement and without coercion. Inducement means you give them something, some benefit that they cannot refuse. So they join because of the benefit. Then it's not voluntary. Coercion means you force them to do it because if they don't join, then they will get some kind of disadvantage or punishment or penalty. That's coercion. So it cannot be both. either or. It has to be voluntary. Okay? And the subjects may withdraw from the research at any time. And of course, confidentiality of the subjects must be fully maintained. And confidentiality is not just the identity of the subject alone. Like I said, any other thing that can point to their identity indirectly should also not be revealed. Okay? Right? Beneficence, your research must be useful and beneficial, okay, to the people, to the subjects and society. Okay, maximize possible benefits, minimize possible harm. Harm here refer to the risk. Now, every research that is risk. We won't say that there is no risk. There is risk in every research. It's a matter of whether the risk is high or low. Okay, so the ratio is the benefit more than the risk. And the next one is justice. There must be justice in research. What do we mean by justice, right? This is quite clear, especially in medical or clinical research. Fairly distribute the burden and benefits of research. Now, in every research, there is benefit and there is burden. Burden is the risk. There's always these two, okay? And now you should fairly distribute it to the people, okay? For example, and we call in medical research, especially when the research is funded by some company, especially drugs company, right? They will always do drug research. When they come up with a new drug, they need to test it on some people before they can, get permission to sell the drug. They have to prove that it is safe, it is effective. So where are they going to, who are the people they're going to test it on? Right? These are very rich companies, pharmaceutical companies. So we call it ethics dumping because there are cases where they do this research, they contact researchers in third world countries or countries which are not so rich like Malaysia, okay? And then pay the researchers, some benefit and then ask them to conduct the research, which is good, right? Right? And Malaysians are the ones who are participating in this research, right? Even though you say there is benefit, but there is always risk. The risk is borne by Malaysian people. But when the subject, the drug or the medication is approved and patented, right? And then it goes to the market. The price is so high that Malaysians cannot afford it. Now, patented drugs, the new patented drugs are very expensive. So Malaysians can't afford it. Only very rich people can afford it. And the drug is sold mainly to developed countries like the US, UK, because they can afford it. But who are the people who bore the risk of the research? It's Malaysian. Okay, so this is called ethics dumping, where although the drug is good for mankind, it's good for everyone, but who's the one who bear the burden of the research? So this is where the justice come in. So when your research has funding from or sponsorship from a big company, all right, the committee will ask, who is this company and what benefit are they giving you and what are their terms and conditions? And when the drug is approved, are they going to give any concession to Malaysia, especially if it is an overseas company, right? Are they going to give concession to Malaysia, like for example, selling at a lower price? Or are they going to give like a big bulk of the medication to Malaysia? Okay, I give you 1 million worth of products for the benefit of Malaysia. I give it to you free of charge, for example, or at a low price. This all must be negotiated in an agreement. So when a research has funding, there must be agreement, and this agreement is with UPM, the legal affair of UPM. Is the agreement must be signed, okay, and checked by the UPM legal affairs, division. Okay, so the ethics committee will just ask and question, okay, of all the terms and ask the investigator to make sure that the agreement or the contract is fair to Malaysia, fair to our people in that kind of case, right? Okay, so what about humanities and social sciences? Because this is not medical research. Again, there are benefits for the powerful and the advantaged community, and then the burden is borne by the poorer community, but the benefit of the findings of the research finally benefits everyone, especially the powerful and the advantaged people. But the people who actually had to bear the burden or the risk of the research is actually the poorer people. For example, I will talk about this when I show you one of the cases, right? Okay, so these are the three principles. All right, so we also, when you submit your application, what do ethics committees look for, particularly when reviewing your proposal? Okay, so two things. One is scientific soundness, including researcher qualification. Okay, right? So if you're doing something which you're not qualified to do, that is also an ethical issue. That's why we ask you for your CV. So if you are not qualified to do a research of that kind, then we will question, why are you doing this? Okay, so scientific soundness also. Some researchers say, why should you talk about scientific soundness? You should just be looking at the safety and welfare. But in ethics, scientific soundness matter. Because if your research has no scientific grounding, then it is unethical to carry it out in the first place. Okay? So this is why we need reviewers who are expert in the field. Right? Lecturers, please offer yourself to be reviewers. Okay? Because you need your expertise. According to the topic of the research, we expect that you know the scientific soundness of that particular methodology and so on. Okay, and of course, safety and welfare of research participants, and more so when vulnerable groups are involved. Okay, vulnerable groups are people who are impaired, unable to give consent, sick people, children, socially stigmatized groups, like for example, sex workers or prostitutes, for example. Okay, victims of violence, right, abuse and so on, incarcerated persons like those in prison and in rehabilitation center, all of these are considered vulnerable groups. Okay, so when there is a vulnerable group involved, it becomes high risk and your research will go into full board review. Full board review means you have to present orally, the investigator has to appear in front of the ethics committee and present the research and answer questions, right? If your research does not involve anything sensitive and doesn't involve a vulnerable group, then it will be classified as expedited, meaning you don't have to appear and present, right? The reviewer will just review and give you the written comments, and then you just make the amendments. Okay? Right. So scientific soundness, okay. Okay, one word on jurisdiction. I know many students are very unhappy about this, especially foreign students, right? Where if you are doing your research, collecting your data fully in a different country, okay, out of Malaysia and out of UPM totally, right? We ask you to get your ethics approval from that country and not from us, even though you are a UPM student. Okay, so some students, they say they collect the data in China or India or in the Middle East. Okay, they collect the data fully from there. So we ask them to get their ethical approval from there, not from us. Why? Because of the jurisdiction, right? So when we give approval, when the committee gives approval, there is the implied understanding that the committee can oversee your actions, whether or not you actually comply with what you say you are going to do. Now, when you get approval based on your proposal, we expect that you carry out your research according to what you say in your proposal. You cannot go and change it to something else. Then you are lying. Then you are breaking the rule of the approval, the conditions of the approval, then that will make the approval invalid. So if something bad happened to your subjects, let's say one of your subjects suddenly died, okay, right after the research or during the research. So there is a query, why did the subject die while doing your research, while participating in your research? And then you look at the protocol. In the protocol, you say you're going to do it this way, but in actual fact, you do it in a different way. And that caused the participant to die, for example. So the ethical approval is no longer valid. Okay, so UPM is not responsible for that, for the death of your participant. Okay, in any way, in any case, the responsibility is the investigator. It's not the university. But ethics committee will say that you did not follow the methodology which was approved. You did something else. Okay, so once you get approval based on your proposal, that proposal is kept in JKE UPM, in the TNCPI's office, and it will be there. So if anything happens, it will be referred to that proposal and not some other updated one. So you can't come with an updated one and say, this is my new proposal. We will say, no, the one that we approve is this one. Okay? So if you want to update your proposal and change your methodology, you have to apply back and say that you want to get approval for the change. Okay? So this is to protect yourself. So because we don't have jurisdiction, so if let's say something happened in India or China or whatever, we can't go there and check. We can't go there and inquire, okay, what happened there? What did you do there? We can't, because we can't go to another country. We don't have a jurisdiction. We only have jurisdiction of what happened in UPM. Okay? Right? And what UPM researchers, lecturers do. So this is the reason why we ask you to get your approval from the other country. So the body that gives you the approval in your own country will be the one to check on what you do. They are responsible for you. Okay? So we cannot do site visit or audit for investigative procedure, approval, or progress report, respondent complaint, right? Sometimes the respondent complain and say, I took part in this research by this researcher, and this researcher said this to me and did that to me, for example. So there is a complaint, right? The complaint. So we will also go and query the investigator. So, but if your approval is given by a different country and your location is a different country, we can't do that. So we prefer not to give you the approval here. Okay? Right? So that is a problem, but so this is a perennial question. Everyone is asking, then how should this be dealt with? Because many students say in their own country, they don't have the IRB. They don't have the ethics committee that will give them the approval. Even if there is a committee, they don't want to give the approval. So what can they do, right? So if you have really no choice, then you have to show proof to us that you really cannot get approval from your own country. And for medical research, medical and clinical research, they are very clear in the way they do things. They will always have a site supervisor in the other country. So the student will have a site supervisor. And that site supervisor will be responsible for overseeing how the research is carried out. But for social science and humanities, this is not our what? Excuse me. Right. This is not the way we do things. Yeah. We don't suddenly appoint somebody from another country to be part of our, supervisor or whatever. We don't. It's just not in our culture or the way we do things. So this is a contention, yeah? So if you feel that your supervisor knows a lecturer in your own country and they are close, they know each other, they are in line with each other in terms of their methods of doing things, their understanding. There must be understanding. If there's no understanding, then there will be conflict. Because in social science and humanities, it's not something which is totally objective. Yeah, a lot of things are subjective. So we don't simply just include people in the supervisory committee or for the research. So, but if there is such a case where the supervisor knows someone in your own country and they are on good terms and they don't mind appointing that person as a site supervisor, then that would be very good, because then that person, when you apply to JKE UPM, you can say that there is a site supervisor in the other country, and then you are applying for approval here. Okay? But this is not a practice that many people want to do. Yeah, I have to admit that. Okay, so why apply for ethical approval? I think you already know the answer. Okay. What's the answer? What is research involving human subjects? Any research involving participation of human subjects or use of human tissue. Use of human tissue is also considered involving human subject. Okay? Why is ethical clearance from the university important? Of course, you say protection of participants and researchers. It's also to protect researchers, not just the participants. Okay, for very high risk research, okay, we ask you to prepare medical services or medical personnel on standby, right? Some research, right? They want to test out a particular device, right? A certain device, some object on elderly people. Okay, this is under gerontology, right? They want the elderly person to sit on the chair and then stand up and then walk and so on. Okay, they're testing on the chair maybe, right? Okay, but what happens when elderly people stand up and walk and they fall down, right? They can break their bone, right? They have what are the things have you prepared to make sure it doesn't happen? And if it happens, how are you going to deal with it? Okay, and do you have insurance? Okay, so if for this kind of very high risk, we call it high risk, you need to have insurance, you need to have things in place to tell us how do you prevent it from happening? Okay, the location, the type of chair, the location, do you have carpet or is it the floor, is it smooth or is it carpeted, for example? Smooth, of course, is easier to fall down, right? Things like that. The type of chair and the environment. Okay, and then if something really happened, is there any medical personnel on standby? And if the person has a broken bone, needs treatment, who's going to pay for the treatment? Is the researcher going to pay for the treatment? You know, you go bankrupt, right? So you need to have insurance, things like that. So it's not just participant, it's also to protect the researcher. Sometimes you don't realize what are the risks that you are facing as a researcher. So the ethics committee will also look at this. And of course, for journal publication, if you don't have it, it's quite hard for you to publish. Who should apply? Okay, even though it's all research conducted in UPM, all researchers. Okay, if it is a lecturer's research, of course, the lecturer is the PI, principal investigator. Okay. Now for students, postgraduate students, even though it is your research, but when you apply for ethical approval, the PI is the supervisor. It is not you. Okay, and this thing has been debated already for a long time. Why is it the supervisor and not the student? Okay, because the supervisor is the one who has to be held accountable to make sure that the student is doing what they're supposed to do. Okay, so the PI is the supervisor, right? And not the student. The student will be the co-investigator, all right? Okay, what do the ethical committee look for? Okay, all these things, and why is it rejected? All this cannot be answered in one sentence, so we will look at it later. All right, so I mentioned just now there are two types of review. Basically, you don't have to worry about 3 and 4. 3 and 4 here, this is about the adverse events, right? So 1 and 2. Once you first apply, your protocol or your proposal will be indicated as either expedited or full board. Okay, so expedited means you don't have to present in front of the committee. Full board means you have to appear in front of the committee and present. And of course, the whole committee can ask you questions. When there is sensitive issue, high risk, vulnerable population involved, then most of the time you will need to go to full board review. Okay? Expedited review, the research poses low risk. We cannot say there's no risk, so please don't write in your proposal there is no risk. There is always risk. So tell us what is the risk, yeah? The study doesn't involve vulnerable population. The study does not involve the collection of stigmatizing information. Stigmatizing information, right? In your questionnaire or in your interview, you ask them about their sexual orientation, okay? And things like that, right? Stigmatizing information, things which can cause them to feel uncomfortable, okay? Study uses anonymize or archive existing data. So, okay, so this will be low risk. Now, protocols involving interviews, questionnaires, conversations of a non-confidential nature, not likely to be detrimental to the status or interest of subject. Then that will go under expedited, not likely to offend the sensibilities and sensitivities of subject. Then it can go under expedited. If the topic or the questions themselves, not just the topic, we also look at your questions. Because when you apply, you have to give us your questionnaire and your interview questions. We want to know what kind of questions you want to ask. Okay? So if you ask questions which can offend the sensitivity of the subject or make them feel ashamed and things like that, then we will ask you, is this necessary for this research? If it's not necessary, you don't ask it, right? If it's necessary, then we also want to find out what are you going to do if they feel depressed or offended, and this is a psychological harm, right? So how are you going to mitigate or counter it? So you must have a plan in hand. If you don't have a plan, then we ask you, what is your plan? Okay? All right. Okay, so for full board review, the study poses high risk, involve vulnerable groups, or stigmatizing information. So the reviewers, they have to present their findings, present their findings. The reviewer will present the findings to the panel, and the panel action is deliberated. So the reviewer of the protocol, of your protocol, they will present their findings to the full board. The full board will discuss it, and then the PI and the co-investigator, they have to attend the full board meeting to present the study protocol and answer the questions posed by the committee. Okay? Right. So how is the protocol or your proposal reviewed? There will be 2 reviewers, right? There will be 1 scientific reviewer, we call this the primary reviewer, and 1 informed consent reviewer. This is ICF reviewer, IC reviewer. The first one is scientific reviewer, where they look at the entire proposal, and the informed consent reviewer will look at the part where you get informed consent from the participants, whether the participants know what they are getting into, whether you fully inform them what they have to do, and so on, everything related to consent. Before they know everything and then you ask them to consent, then that is not informed consent. Informed consent means they have to know all those things. So what are the things they need to know is in the form. Okay, you can download the form from the JKA UPM website. Informed consent form will contain all the things that you need to write down, which will inform the participants. Everything, right? Because the participant will not read your proposal. Your proposal is very long and it's written in scientific jargon. So the participant will not read your proposal. They will read the informed consent form. And the informed consent form must include all the relevant information that they must know. So there will be 2 reviewers. So you will get comments from these 2 reviewers, and then you have to amend your proposal and your informed consent form, or amend your questionnaire, or amend your interview questions, or whatever things you need to amend according to the comments. Okay, so after you have amended, then you have to resubmit it back to get the approval. Okay. All right, so the primary reviewer, which is the scientific reviewer, all right, they will consider actually the entire proposal, just like your supervisor. So that's why some researchers are not very happy. They say, oh, it's like another supervisory committee. Well, but we can't help it, right? Because if your research is let us say not scientifically sound, like I said, then it is unethical for you to carry it out. Okay, so they will look at the statement of the problem and the related literature. They will ask questions like, is this research justified? Is there sufficient literature to back the research and its objective? Are there any discrepancies, weaknesses, misinformation, misinterpretation, or wrong claim? So they will look at all of this. For example, of wrong claim, which I have come across, right? Somebody wrote in the proposal, research has shown that exposing young children to many languages at home confuses the child and is detrimental to the child's language development. And they use this as the justification to do their research. Okay, but for those who are in the field, we know that this is not true. Even if you put a citation there, cited from which researcher, well, I would doubt it very much. Maybe this is published in a not well-known journal, okay, not a reputable journal, for example, okay, and maybe only 1 researcher said this, because there are 100 more researchers who say this is not true. It is good to expose young children to many languages, and they can handle it. It's not going to be detrimental to their language development. No researcher in the field have actually said this. If you found someone who said it, maybe that person is just 1 person, right? So that is misinformation. Okay, so if we come across things like that, of course we will question. And you use this as a basis for your research, and we will say that this cannot be the basis. So what is your justification for your research? So we will not allow you to go and do something which is totally wrong, right? Okay. Right. Risk level, we look at the risk level. Is the risk justified in view of the expected benefit from the research? So every research has risk, but we want to look at the risk, right, and compare it to the benefit. If the benefit is a good, outweigh the risk, then we will say you can carry on. But what are you going to do about the risk? Okay, so it's not like there is risk, so therefore you cannot do it. No. All right, there is risk because a lot of research has a lot of risk, right? There is risk, but you have to tell us how you are going to manage it and make sure that the participants are protected. Methodology, is it sound? Can the objectives be achieved? And ethical issues, how are the participants protected? Okay. Okay, common reasons why the protocols are rejected. Quite common, right? The research has already started or has been completed. Don't ever send an application for research ethical approval if you have already started your data collection. You have already started interviewing your subjects. You have already started collecting your questionnaire data. If you have done that, then you cannot apply for ethical research because you have already done it. Okay? If you really still want to have it, then whatever you have collected has to be thrown away and you have to recollect your data after you get the approval. Okay? Because before you get approval, sometimes you might have to change your methodology, right? According to the comments of the reviewer. So your earlier collection of data cannot be used. You have to throw it away and you have to start from fresh based on new participants, not from the same participants, yeah? And you have to state it clearly. So if you have already started and you want to use that data, then you cannot apply for ethical approval. Okay, please be clear about this, right? Right, and sometimes we don't really know whether you have completed, right? So some of the students wrote down using the past tense, indicating completed work. Of course, your protocol or the proposal should not be written in the past tense, right? You write in the past tense in your thesis because the work is already completed. But when you apply for ethical approval, we assume that the work is not done yet. So it should not be in the past tense. Past tense means you've done it already. So the reviewer get confused. Is it done already or not? Why are you writing past tense? Right? Everything you write in the past tense. You say the questionnaire was administered. Was administered. Okay, is it done already? I get confused. So please be clear, you are writing it is a proposal level. So shouldn't be in the past tense and confusing us. And poor language meaning that the language is written which is incomprehensible to the reviewer. The reviewer cannot understand, cannot get the meaning that they want to, the content that they want to know. So if they really cannot understand, they will chuck it back at you, yeah? Because cannot review, right? Or the protocol is missing a required information. You know, there is a template, there is a form which is a template for the protocol, for the proposal. So you must make sure that every part is filled with enough information, right? And some students thought that they can send the entire first 3 chapters of the thesis because it's complete. We are not happy with this because we don't want to read your first 3 chapters of your thesis, right? First 3 chapters is how many pages? How many 100 pages? Okay? We want you to summarize it and put it according to the template with all the relevant information explained clearly. That's what we want, not your entire 3 chapters. Okay? Right? So the scientific soundness is doubtful. Objectives are not clear. No clear justification for the research. Inappropriate methods. Sampling methods are not clear. The instruments and procedures are unclear and so on. So when all of this happen, then you will be rejected, or actually most of the time it is returned to you for amendments. And then you have to amend it and then resubmit. Okay, also when you do not mention compensation, when you have human subjects, we assume that you are taking their time, right? And they have to make effort to join your research. So are you going to compensate them? For example, you say they must come to your office for the interview. So they have to take the bus to come to your office. They have to spend 2 hours to travel to your office and go back. When that 2 hours, they can use it to work and earn some money, right? Okay, so that you as a researcher, you should compensate them or to give them something. Okay, depending on how much work and time they have to spend to take part. So you must mention what compensation, right? If it is just an online form where they just fill up an online form at home where they don't have to come out, okay? And the form doesn't take a lot of time, okay? So sometimes you don't have to give any compensation, right? But if you want to give, it's also fine, right? But if you require them to come out to the hospital to do something, spend some hours to attend your course, intervention, you have to give them something. Okay, so protocols do not mention compensation to participants, and/or the compensation is too high. Too high means it becomes an inducement, right? Okay, I want you to give me your blood. I want to take your blood to test for something inside the blood, right? Pre and post. And after you take the medication or supplement, and then I want to take your blood again to check whether there's any change, right? So nobody like to give the blood, right? Who wants to be pricked by the needle and give the blood? Nobody likes it, right? But I will give you 200 ringgit, okay? Of course, I will give my blood. I get 200 ringgit. So that is inducement, right? So you have to mention the compensation in your proposal because we want to see what are you giving them. And it cannot be too low, right? Researcher says you must come to HPUPM, the clinic, to the hospital. So we want to take your blood. So how much is the compensation to them? 2 ringgit. 2 ringgit? I asked, when I drive my car to HPUPM, I go in once, I have to pay 250 already for parking. That's not including my petrol and the time that I spend. 2 ringgit is not even enough to pay for my parking in HPUPM. So it's too low, okay? Not nice, right? Okay, so give something which is reasonable. And sometimes compensation is wrongly stated as a benefit. This is not a benefit, yeah? Compensation is compensation for the time and effort spent. It is not a benefit of the research to the participant. Okay? Information for participants is unacceptable in the ICF. The information is not acceptable because it's written using scientific jargon. It's not clear to the reader. Now, in the informed consent form, it's written for the participants to understand, to read and understand. So you cannot write something which they cannot understand. If you write something in the informed consent form, the respondent information sheet, that a normal person, a lay person who is not a researcher cannot understand, then it cannot be used, right? You have to rewrite it to make sure that your participants, if they read, they can understand. Lack of information about participants' role and responsibilities. You have to inform the participant what you expect them to do. Do not misrepresent. Some of them tell the participant, oh, you just answer a questionnaire. But once they join the research, suddenly they realize they have to answer the questionnaire 5 times. Okay, once a week they have to answer. Okay, suddenly they say, how come I have to come 5 times? But I thought it's only answer 1 questionnaire, but it's 5 times. So you need to be very clear what they have to do. Okay, if you're not clear about what they have to do and they give their consent, then that is not informed consent. They don't know the full picture. Okay, and then lack of voluntariness. Okay, voluntariness means it must be clear to the participant they join voluntarily. It's not because they have to. Withdrawal terms are not mentioned. If the participant want to withdraw halfway after joining, they say, no, I changed my mind. Okay, we have to mention clearly they are free to withdraw. Okay, and the contact ID of researchers. In the form, the researcher just say the name only and put a name and the email. This is not enough. Your name, who are you? Graduate student or PhD student? Which faculty? Faculty of Medicine, Faculty of Modern Languages, okay, and the supervisor's name, and also what is the position of your supervisor, in which faculty, what is the phone number. All of this contact must be in the form so that the participants, if they want to ask anything, they can straight away call. Privacy and confidentiality is not mentioned. And again, no risk management procedure. Risk management procedure, as I said, what have you put in place to make sure that the participants are protected from the risk? Okay, and then of course language, yeah. Now, participating in the research by itself is not a benefit to participants. So many students misunderstand this, right? Under benefit, in the form, there is a place for benefit to participants, and they write down that participating in the research is already a benefit. How is it a benefit? By participating in your research is not a benefit, right? It's a benefit to you, but not the benefit to participant. The participants will not benefit just by answering your questionnaire or letting you take their measurements, okay, the weight measurement or the height and so on. How can they benefit? It's you who's benefiting, right? So some students write like this under benefit, right? Benefit to participant, they wrote like this. The research aims to evaluate workers' knowledge about safety practices at the workplace. Okay, this is the aim of the research, right? They want to know whether how much the workers know about safety practices at their workplace. And then they write down, participants will know more about safety at the workplace after participating in the research. And they write it down as a benefit. So what the researcher is saying is, if you participate in my research and you answer all the questionnaire that I give you, you will know more about safety. It's a big question mark, right? How can they know more about safety just by participating and answering your questionnaire? Your questionnaire is not teaching them about safety, right? Your questionnaire is asking information from them to you. Okay, so this cannot be, don't ever write this because I see this all the time. This is not a benefit. Okay, so what's the benefit for the research? You have to think about what benefit do the participants get if they participate in your research. What do they get? If there is none, just say it, there is none. They don't get anything. Don't talk about compensation. Yeah, compensation is not benefit, right? That is to compensate for the time and effort. So if there's no benefit, you have to say clearly, there is no benefit, direct benefit to the participants individually. But of course, there must be benefit to society, right? Because if there's no benefit to society, then you shouldn't be doing this research at all, right? And most important, there is no voluntariness, even though the statement of voluntariness is presented to participants, right? How do we know? Researchers, the reviewer will know, right? In your form, you write down clearly that participants do this voluntarily. It's voluntary. But when we read your methodology, we know it's not voluntary. How do we know? Okay, it's not enough to just say it is voluntary. It's very easy to say it's voluntary. Who cannot say it, right? But when you look at your research, we will know whether it's voluntary or not indirectly. Yeah, I will talk about this. Yeah. Another reason for rejection, inappropriate researcher ideological stance towards the stigmatized population. This is especially for social science and humanities, not for the scientific, not for the clinical or medical research. Okay, because this is the kind of topics that social science and humanities researchers will do. For example, this researcher write in the proposal, yeah, the research aims to contribute towards converting LGBTQ students into straight individuals through this training program. Right? Can this kind of research be accepted? We will say no, because your ideological stance is that these students, LGBTQ, they are problematic. There is something wrong with them, and we must convert them into straight students. That means they are abnormal. You are taking this stance. Okay, so you have no respect for these people to be who they are. So you go in as a researcher, it's not to find out, to get more knowledge, right? To help everyone. It's not to understand. Okay, it's not for the sake of getting deeper knowledge about the topic, about the issue. But you go in with the idea you want to convert these people because they are abnormal. So this is unethical. Okay. Next, another similar one. The study seeks to investigate how this negative gender identity was formed. Negative gender identity or LGBTQ. Okay. So from here, we can already know that you have this, what do you call it, a discriminatory stance against the subjects. Negative gender identity. So your stance is that this is called negative gender identity, right? That's from your point of view, but there is also a lot of point of view from other people in society that this is not considered negative, right? So if your idea is negative, then how would you respect your participants? you will probably ask them questions like, you should be changing your identity. Why are you doing this? It's negative. It's not good for you. You will be saying these kind of things. Okay, and that is not allowed because then there is no respect for your participant and you are causing harm, psychological harm to the participant, especially if the participants are young participants in school, and you go and talk to them, interview them, you say your gender identity is all wrong, you're abnormal. We cannot allow this, right? Okay. Next one. For example, the study aims to investigate the immoral personality of women who had been pregnant before marriage, right? Women who are pregnant before marriage, this is a very serious problem faced by them because of the circumstances that they are in, usually a very bad circumstances that they are in that lead to this kind of thing. But your stance is the immoral personality. That means you are putting the blame on them. So you would question on what basis you can make this connection. So all of this will come under the review, the primary reviewer who will question this kind of objective. Okay, this one for language. The aim of the program is to train non-native speakers of English to speak with the pronunciation of British English. Okay, I encountered this before in a conference where the speaker actually said she wants to come up with a training program to train speakers to speak with that kind of native pronunciation. Okay, fine, if that's what you want, but there are a lot of critical researchers also attending the conference and they were not happy about this at all. They were asking, why do you need to train non-native speakers to speak like native speaker? Why do you need to speak like British people? Why? Okay. It's very hard to answer this kind of question.
I see. Is that you?
Yes.
You okay aja lah. Ada flash. Ya.
Okay, next here. Lack of scientific awareness. Okay, this is very important. Lack of scientific awareness of the tools of instruments used. This is a misunderstanding of the instrument. Using an English as first language normed tool to measure language disorder in ESL children. Okay, so some researchers, they take a tool, an instrument, which is meant for English as first language children. Okay, and that is normal for them, where they can measure that this is normal language development. But they use it for ESL children. ESL is English as a second language children, not first language. And if you use this tool to use it on ESL children, what will you do? What will you get? You will find that a majority of the children suddenly have language disorder. Actually, they don't have language disorder, right? It's just that they are ESL children and this tool is not suitable to be used to find out, to measure language disorder. So you are using the wrong tool, okay? Another one, which happened in our country actually, using a Malay language tool to measure language disorder or cognitive function among young orang asli children who have difficulty understanding Malay language. So the young orang asli children, they are not proficient in Malay language. They have difficulty in this because this is not their home language, right? But what happened was that a Malay language tool was used on them, and then if they do badly, then they are considered as having language disorder. So they are classified as special needs. Okay, special needs, yeah, OKU or whatever you want to call it. But it is not the case. Yeah, they are they don't have language disorder. It's because the tool, the instrument you use is not appropriate. Okay, so these things you have to be very careful, right? Okay. Right, what about collecting unnecessary information? Especially information that could be stigmatizing or cause stereotyping. Okay, information like race, ethnicity, religion, religious practices, sexual orientation, broad brush culture, saying this culture, that culture, okay, pornographic viewing. Now, in one of the researchers showed Malaysia was listed as the 4th in the world, according to the website, the 4th most frequent visitors to pornographic website. So we question this, whether or not this website is actually reliable in making that kind of a conclusion. Okay, now we must remember that every variable that you collect, whether statistically analyzed, will yield some result, whether or not that result is meaningful. However, when such results are reported, they will influence the reader and cause harm to the research population. If there is no scientific backing to include a particular variable, then do not include it. Now, that if there is no scientific backing for you to use race, like Malay, Chinese, Indian, Sarawakian, whatever, or Iban, if there is no scientific backing, okay, to include, to connect whatever you are doing to race, then we would advise you not to include it because it can give a wrong information to the reader, right? Unless there is a very strong scientific backing that this kind of relationship actually do matter. If not, don't just simply do it because they will give wrong information. So this is some of the things we will question when you submit your proposal. Okay, exempted research. I won't go through this. Okay. All right. So exempted research, for example, right? Pictures like this, you cannot see the face. Yeah, you can't see the face directly, so you cannot recognize anyone. So this is allowed. It's not harmful, not so harmful compared to any picture where you can see the face, right? Okay, so what are the constraints? Once you get your approval, if you make any changes along the way, you have to apply to the PASC committee to institute the change. Okay, because the original approval is based on your submitted proposal. But along the way, sometimes you need to change. So you have to reapply, to apply to the post-approval committee to state that you want to change certain parts of your proposal. Okay, progress report, 1 year for non-clinical trial, and submit your final report at the completion of the study. Adverse events, all that you don't have to worry. This is for clinical trial. Yeah. Okay, now let's talk about informed consent. Ethical consideration. Informed consent is on the part of the participant, taking the position and perspective of participant. Okay, I'm gonna try to finish this. Hopefully there's enough time. Right, this is to ensure the rights and safety of participants are protected and the participants are giving their consent having full information and they are fully voluntary. This is what we want to make sure when we talk about informed consent. So there is a form on informed consent. It is called Respondent Information Sheet. It is on the website, JNCPI, JKEUPM website. You can download that. You have to fill that up. So what are the parts required in this form? Okay, right. So the form is called Form 2.4, Respondent Information Sheet. Okay, so how do you fill this? The research information must be written using layperson's language, no technical jargon that common people can understand. Because this one is not going to be read by researchers. This is going to be read by the participants. So your participants are the people on the street, for example, right? So it must be written in a way that they can understand. Okay? Right. Participants must know what they have to do. How much time do they have to spend? Where must they go? Do they do it at their own home or they must come to your office or to the hospital? What will be done to them? When they come, what are you going to do to them? You're going to take their weight and the height, measure their height and their weight, or you want to ask them to eat something? Okay, or are you going to ask them to walk around and jump around or do something? What is it you want them to do? You have to say it clearly in this form. What will be collected from them? Okay, and so on. Right, language comprehensible to lay people. For example, for medical research, it is very common that the students will write like this because this is what they write in their thesis. But in the informed consent form, you cannot write like this because who can understand? Right? What is geriatric nutritional evaluation? What is adipose tissue redistribution? What is anthropometric evaluation? Okay, so you have to convert it to layperson's language, body measurements, okay, such as weight and height. That is anthropometric evaluation. Nutritional status of elderly people, that is geriatric nutritional evaluation. So write it in a way that normal people can understand. If you write like this, then it will be rejected, yeah? If your proposal is in English, then your ICF form needs to be in 2 languages, Malay and English. If your proposal is written in Malay, then you only need to have the Malay version because we assume it is for Malaysian population. But if it involves people who don't know Malay language, then you can also include other languages for the ICF version. Okay, now, even though you have written everything nicely and you say this is in a layperson's language that they can understand, but you are still expected to go through the form and explain the content to the participant. You still have to explain it orally to the participant before you ask them to sign the form. They need to have the chance to ask you questions. Okay, so don't just chuck the information sheet to them and say, read it yourself. Okay, you have to explain. They can ask you question. Make sure you answer all the questions and then only they sign the form. This is called informed consent, right? Okay, there is also, these are all the questions in the form. Is there any benefit for participating? So as I mentioned just now, please don't say, if you participate, you will know more about the research topic. No. Question is, will participants be given the result of the standardized English test they are asked to take? Okay, so let us say your research require them to take an English test. And after that, you ask them to do some other thing, right? But they take an English test. So many participants want the result of the English test. For example, a MOET test or IELTS test, and they don't have to pay for it, right? Because you pay for it, because you are the researcher. You promise them that you will pay for the test. So after they've taken the test, they want to know the result. So are you going to give them the result? If they can get the result, then that is a benefit to them because they don't have to pay for the IELTS or the MOET test, but they get the result. So that is a benefit. Okay. Will they get the nutritional counseling session after the research is over? Okay, so during the research, there is something about nutrition and so on. So once the research is over, you are going to give them some counseling about their nutrition, about how to eat better. Okay, are you going to give them a counseling? Okay, then if you are, then you say this is a benefit. Because this is not part of the research, actually. It's already over, right? But you will give extra benefit to them because they participated in your research, right? So it's a benefit. So you can mention that. Will they get a 6-month free access to the online tutoring program you are researching on? Okay, so you have the online tutoring program and you are doing research on this. Okay, so after the research is over, are you going to give them the free access so they can use it for 6 more months? Okay, well, if you are, then you tell them this is a benefit. So this is what we mean by benefit for participating. If you don't have any of this, then just say there is no direct benefit to them as individual. Okay, now compensation, will they get compensation? Like I said just now, transport fee, lunch. Okay, if they come and they have to spend a few hours with you, are you going to give them lunch, for example? Okay, compensation. Are there any risk? Please don't say there are no risk. We mention the risk. There will be risk, okay, whether high or low. Physical and health risk. For example, is there a risk of falling when doing the exercises required? You ask them to do some exercise in front of you. Is there any risk if they fall down? Risk of allergy to the breakfast drink given, right? You do your research in a school in the morning, right? You want all the students to do some kind of exercise for physical education. And then you give them breakfast, right? As part of your research, you give them breakfast or a breakfast drink. Is there any risk of allergy? If there is, what are you going to do? You have to check. So the risk here is to make sure you understand that there are risks, and so you are prepared for it. If you don't think about this, and the person gets allergy after drinking the breakfast drink you give them, what are you going to do? Sometimes the allergy can be very serious, right? So write down what is your plan? How are you going to mitigate this? How are you going to prevent this? And if this happens, what are you going to do? So that is the risk mitigation. Okay. What about emotional risk? Risk of feeling depressed after answering question. Before they answer your question, they don't feel depressed. After answering your question, they become depressed. Okay. Or risk of not getting enough exam practice because they took part in your storytelling research. Okay, so you take up your time in school for your storytelling activity, right? And those who took part in your storytelling research, they didn't spend time on their exam practice, whereas the other students who didn't take part, they were doing exam practice. So they are not doing well. They don't do well in the exam. Okay, so this is a risk. So can you conduct this research like this, or what kind of mitigation are you going to do to make sure they don't have this risk? So there is risk, everything you do, in every research. You have to think about it, okay? And what will be done if these things happen? This will be the mitigation and plan. What are you going to do? Right, so all of this must be written down in the informed consent form, the respondent information form, okay? Of course, you will also write this in your proposal, yeah? But proposal is for the reviewer to read. In the the respondent information sheet is for the participants to read. Voluntariness, participants must know they can decline from participating and withdraw after agreeing without any penalty. So this must be stated clearly. And there must be like exclusion criteria stated. Who are the participants? Who are the people who cannot participate? Okay, for safety purposes and also not to waste their time. Right? There was one questionnaire, one proposal that the researcher wrote this. The researcher wants everyone in the class, the subjects, right, to fill out the questionnaire. And then after that, looking at the questionnaire, looking at the answer in the questionnaire, then she will exclude those who state that they have an allergy to a certain food. So there will be one question in the questionnaire is, do you have an allergy to this food? So the researcher will look at the questionnaire, and anyone who answered that they have allergy to that food will be excluded. But excluded, okay? So those who are excluded have already filled up the entire questionnaire, not just that question, yeah? So they already wasted their time. So what is the purpose of you asking all of them to fill up the questionnaire? You should state it right from the beginning. Exclusion criteria, everybody who has allergy to this food, you are excluded straight away. Then you don't ask them to fill up your questionnaire and waste their time, okay? Confidentiality, I've talked about this, and who to contact, and the language, right? Okay, so I also talk about voluntariness and inducement and coercion. Okay, inducement, for example, those who participate will be given points for promotion in the company. This is inducement. Coercion, students who don't participate in the study will not be selected for the upcoming school trip. This is coercion, this is punishment, right? Okay, so you cannot have anything like this, whether directly or indirectly. What if the participant is not able to give consent, right? Children, people suffering from dementia, very sick people, people who cannot read or write, and so on, then you need to fill out Form 2.5. So Form 2.5 is the legally authorized representative, that is the guardian, parents or guardian. So this form have to be filled, okay? All right, let us look at some cases. Do we have time, Mr. Arif? Okay, not enough time, you just look at the slides later, right? Okay, so students in a school are given a storybook to be read with their parents for 10 minutes a day as a reading sharing activity. Okay? So you give a storybook and you instructed the parents every day for 10 minutes a day, you must sit with the child and read the book together. However, some parents ask the children to read and then criticize their reading, thinking they are doing the right thing because you didn't give enough proper instruction. So the parents, being parents, they ask the child to read and the reading is not that good. And then they criticize them. Hey, you shouldn't read like this. This is wrong. Okay? Of course, then there will be negative effect. So what is the negative effect on the child and the research? That will make your research, out because you want the parents and children to have a good time reading, a shared activity, a shared experience. So the feeling must be positive. But the parents turn it into a negative experience and you don't realize it, okay? So what must you do? You must have a monitoring system. So what is your monitoring system to make sure that this kind of thing don't happen? So as a researcher, you have to anticipate what could happen and you must have a way to monitor. That means once in a while, you have to monitor, call the parents, talk to the children, how do you feel, things like that, to make sure that they are doing things correctly. So some researchers just say, I do this, I ask them to share reading a book, but I don't have any monitoring system. After 10 weeks, only I ask them, okay, what's the result? Of course, your result will be all wrong, right? Okay? So this is called the risk, right? Number two, A test of depression administered to a group of students showed several students having a high score for depressive symptom. So you run a depression questionnaire on a group of students, and then you find some students have very high score. So are you going to do anything? Okay. You cannot say, well, I just report it in my journal article, that's all, or I report it in my thesis. No, you have the responsibility to do something because you already found the student having high score for depression. So what action must you take? So this must be stated in the form 2.4 under risk. Tell us what are you going to do? Okay, are you going to contact those students with the high score and offer them counseling service or whatever? You have to state clearly. Discuss with your supervisor what action should you take when you find students having high score for depressive symptoms after they answer your questionnaire. Okay, risk management. Is it provide counseling service? If so, who will be providing it? If there is payment, who will pay? Are you going to refer to medical professionals and so on? So we want to know what is your plan. Okay. Case 3. Right, in a school, educational research, students in intact group, you know what's intact group in research, right? You do not separate the students from the class. All who in the class are considered as one group, and all in another class is considered another group. That's intact group. You do not like pick and choose and put them in different groups. Okay, so students who do not participate in an intervention study will not get free breakfast in school, while the participating students will get. Is this an ethical issue? How is this harmful to the non-participating students? Okay, so imagine that you have one class, okay? All the class students, they must take part in the intervention. The intervention can be anything, right? Maybe I give them some computer things to do, or I teach in a certain way. But some students did not agree to participate. That means the parents didn't agree, right? So let's say 3 students. The parents say, no, I don't agree. I don't agree for my child to take part in this research, but they belong to that class, right? And you can't kick them out, right? Because they belong to that class. You cannot say during my lesson when I'm doing the intervention, these 3 students, please get out because you are not participating. You cannot do that. If you do that, it's unethical. So what are you going to do with them? Okay, in this case, it is not asking them to get out, but they will not get the breakfast. So all the students in the class will get a free breakfast except the 3 students. Oh, you 3 students, you're not participating, so we don't have the budget for you. You don't get breakfast. Is this ethical? So we will question you in the intact group. What will happen to the students who do not wish to participate? What are you going to do with them? So you have to give them the breakfast as well, even if they are not participating, because you cannot single them out and say, because 3 of you are not participating, you don't get to eat. I give the breakfast to the rest of them. To you, it is right because that's your budget. Your budget is for your participant, but you have to see the effect on the non-participant in the class. Okay? Right, and this is another one. Students in high school are asked to look at cigarette advertisement and talk about whether they are attracted to smoking by the advertisement. The idea is to look at the persuasive element in the advertisement. They want to show advertisement for smoking, and they want the students to tell us, how are they attracted to smoking? Do they feel interested in what made them interested? Is it the picture? Is it the color? Is it the what they call it, the celebrity? Okay, your BTS, somebody look like BTS, whatever singer. Okay, they want to know what is in the advertisement that attract the school children to smoking. What is the ethical problem? How is it harmful to the student? Once they look at it, right, and they are attracted, do you think that they will be attracted to smoking and then they will start smoking? Okay, we don't want them to look at the cigarette advertisements at all, especially the attractive ones, because that, advertisement can be very, very attractive, very persuasive, and it will persuade the student to smoke. So you cannot do this, okay? For this, we absolutely disallow it, okay? You cannot show smoking advertisements to students and ask them what is attractive. Even what is not attractive also you cannot show them. So I don't know how you're going to do this. You have to think of some other way to do it. Okay? Right. Case 5, right? Now, the researcher wants to implement a new teaching method. And that new teaching method is supposed to get the students to score A in examination in a school in a certain country. And they want to use 9 months of the regular class time. Regular class time means it's a regular school time. Okay, so instead of the class having the usual class with the usual teacher, the researcher is going to implement her own new teaching method, her own one. This is under research, right? Under investigation. That means we do not know whether this teaching method is going to be effective or not. We have no idea. That's why it's being investigated now. And she wants to use more than 9 months of the class time on these students. And then at the end of 9 months, she wants to see how effective the teaching method is. It's supposed to be supposedly good that people can score A. But that's what you say as a researcher, right? But it's not proven, right? If it's proven already, you don't have to research on it, right? So that means it's not proven, but you expect that your new teaching method is going to get the student to score A, and you're going to implement it over 9 months on this class of student. Okay? Is this ethical? Where is the ethical issue? Can you think about it? And when we ask them, okay, why are you using 9 months, which is very long, and using the regular class time? This is not the after school hours, yeah? It's during the school hour, regular class time. After school hour is different. After school hours means after the school is over, then it's like extracurricular activity, it's additional. This is not, yeah? It's during the class. So the students, the researchers say, the IRB, the ethics committee in their own country, and the principal of the school have already agreed for the research to be conducted. And the aim is, finally, if this is shown to be effective, they want to develop a commercial software to be sold to schools and parents worldwide, because this is going to help the student to get A, to score A in examination. So what is the ethical issue here? Can anyone tell me? Anyone? Just put up your hand, turn on your mic and speak. If your children are here, are in this research, is it an issue for you? Will you be happy? Will you be happy for your children to participate in this research? If you say no, then definitely there is ethical issue. So why are you unhappy? Why are you not happy to have your children participate in this research? Anyone? Any volunteer? No? Nobody?
Hi, Doctor.
Yes, Luciana.
Because it might disturb the learning process. Because for teachers, they have their own syllabus, and to protect the instructional time.
Yeah, but the researcher says, you see, my teaching method is going to help your child to score A in examination. Don't you want the child to score A? Is that something good, you know? What do you say to that?
Because for teachers, they have their plan already. So, but the most important thing is to protect the instructional time. Even though to score A, but again, they cannot complete the syllabus, and it might pressure them at the end of the semester or the class.
Yeah, of course, you don't trust the researcher when the researcher say that your child will score A, right? Because it's unproven, right? Can they guarantee? Cannot guarantee, isn't it?
Yes,
Right,
cannot.
no guarantee, right? So you are using up the regular class time, which is unethical, because you are depriving the child of their regular class time with the regular teacher, which is already proven or sanctioned by the government and by the school. That is what they're supposed to do. But you are bringing in your own teaching method, and you claim that it will help them to score an A, and you're using up 9 months of their time. And furthermore, they say the ethics in their own country and the principal have already agreed. They said, the principal have already agreed for me to do this. So why are you quarreling with me? Why are you disagreeing? Why don't you let me? Because the principal said it's okay. Principle is not ethics, right? They are not looking at the point of ethics. Whatever they are looking at, we don't know, okay? And the aim is to finally to develop a commercial software to be sold to schools and parents who want their children to get A's, to score A, okay? Right? I don't know. Maybe this teaching method can really get students to score A. I don't know, maybe. But who is the benefit? Who is the one benefiting from this final project? is a commercial company that is going to produce the software and sell it, right? So there is commercial interest of a company that will earn money out of this, but who is the one bearing the risk? There is risk because the risk to your children is maybe they will not score A, and maybe they will do even worse because they miss out on their regular lesson. So the risk is borne by the students who participate. Okay, so question now, how does this disadvantage the participants? You know already, okay? But how does this violate the principle of justice? Principle of justice here is that in Malaysia, if I get this proposal, I will reject it or I will not allow them to use the class time for 9 months. Now, you use the class time if it is only like 2 to 3 weeks and just a few hours each day, not really like, the whole day, maybe it's acceptable if the benefit is good, right? 1, 2, or 2 weeks. Otherwise, it should be outside the school hour and things like that. We consider a lot of things, right? But in places, I do not know, in places, other countries like China or some other countries, they may not look at it this way. The principal may think is fine, it's all right, okay? So these students bear the burden of the risk of research. Any harm that come to them in the result is the children who bear it, these children who participate. But if the result is good and they manage to come up with a software and it's very popular, is sold to people, parents, and sold everywhere, the company making this software is the one making money, right? And it's the people who benefit will be the people who can afford the software, the rich people, right? Who can buy the software. So the principle of justice, where the risk of research is borne by a group of students because they are not protected in that country, not protected by ethics in that country, but the people who benefit from the result will be the people who did not bear the risk, but they just enjoy the result. And they enjoy it because they also have money. So this is what I mentioned just now about the principle of justice. I mentioned just now in medical research, but this is not medical research. This is social science research. And it can also happen where there is no principle of justice. Because in some countries, the ethics, they are not as strict as us. The UPM ethics is one of the strictest ethics committee among all the committees in Malaysia. Actually, we are very strict, right? So in those places where the ethics is not that strict, then the participants may be disadvantaged or they may suffer from a lot of risk. Okay. All right. So finish in that group. I will move on. Subscription. I just want to move on to the last one. Okay, this one. The last one, yeah, Mr. Arish. Okay. Okay. A study on domestic abuse required the abuse victim. Okay, somebody wanted to look at what they call not immigrant, refugees. So the refugees in Malaysia, they are staying in some places specified for them to stay, and of course, it's not a very good place to, right? They are like crammed in camps and things like that, right? So this researcher wanted to look at domestic abuse, husband and wife, right? And she wanted to know about how much abuse is happening, okay? And usually it's the wife is abused by husband, but not necessarily, yeah? Husband can also be abused by the wife, yeah? So she wants to find out the extent of domestic abuse among the refugees. So what is the method? Ask by questionnaire. So she distributed the questionnaire to the women, to the wives, and then asked them to answer the questionnaire and then give it back to the researcher. Okay, but in the ethics committee, somebody questioned, where is the wife going to answer the questionnaire? Where? Is it coming to your office or the center, a certain community center, and answer the questionnaire? Or what? But it seems the proposal says the wife will answer it at home, on questionnaire about their abuse on their own, in their own home. And then after that, submit the completed questionnaire to the researcher. So where is the problem? Where is the problem here? Okay. So the question is that you are the victim of abuse and you are answering the questionnaire at home. Is there a chance that the abuser will see that you are answering a questionnaire about abuse? Is there a chance that the husband actually realize you are answering a questionnaire about abuse by him, will it put the wife at risk for more abuse? Is the wife being protected when they answer the questionnaire at home? Okay. So what are the risks that the participant could face with this mode of procedure, and how should this be handled? So what is the suggestion, right? We would not advise you to just say, take the questionnaire and go home, answer the questionnaire and give it back to me. Then you don't care what happened to them. Okay? How should you deal with this as a researcher from an ethical basis? Because domestic abuse victim, this is considered vulnerable population. Vulnerable. So for vulnerable population, you need more protection. So you need to think further. Don't just say, okay, I just give my questionnaire, I collect back, I get my data, that's good enough. We cannot do that, right? So these are all the things, I hope we are running out of time. I hope you understand what are the things we look at and why it is important for you to apply for ethics approval. Okay, all right. So the rest of it, common findings, I think I've already touched on it most of the time, most of the things, yeah. Okay, so for ethics, review exists to protect participants and also researchers, not just participants, but they also protect you from being sued, okay, or accused of doing something wrong. All right, so I will stop sharing my slide, and if there are any questions, you can just ask briefly because I think time is up already. Where should I go? Stop sharing. Okay, so any questions? Just ask directly, yeah, because I think it's quite difficult to scroll down all about this. Just ask if you have a quick question.
Hi, Doctor.
Yes.
Okay, how about if we would like to publish a book for our subject, do we need to apply for the ethical approval?
No, the ethical approval is for conducting the research. It's not about the publication, right?
Okay,
So-
but in publishing our books, we do interview as well, and we have contact with humans.
Okay, is it a research? If it is a research,
it's not a
then
research.
it's not a research.
Yeah, not a research.
If you don't regard it as a research, right, then you do not need to have to apply for ethical approval because our ethical approval is for conducting research, right?
Okay.
But
Thank you,
won't
Doctor.
you consider that as a small research? Because in order to write your book, you have to do a research to gather information, and then you analyze it, and then you get the result, and then only you publish, right? So if
Yes.
you're doing that, then that is considered a research. Then it's better that you apply for ethical approval to do a small research. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know whether you just interview and then just write a book. If you don't consider it a research, then that's fine. Okay, then you don't have to apply for ethical approval. But if it's a research, then you have to. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Doctor.
Okay, so if you apply for research, for example, definitely one of the terms will be that you cannot reveal their identity unless they give you express permission. So when you publish your book after that, which is the result of your research, you also cannot reveal their names unless they give you permission. Yeah? Okay. Okay, any other questions?
We have one on the chat box.
Yeah, but which one? Yeah, so many, I cannot see which one.
The latest one.
Which one? Can I
I
use AI, is it?
No. What do international students need to do before applying the ethical approval in their own country?
If I am a human
Chief.
subject, that one. Can I ask the ethical approval before to join the research? No. Subjects, the ethical approval is for researchers to apply, not for subjects to apply. But the subjects can make complaints. Okay, so if you are a human subject who participate in somebody's research and you feel that that person, the researcher did something wrong, okay, you can lodge a complaint with the ethical committee. But application for research ethical approval is done by the researcher, not the subject. Yeah, and can I use AI to revise the protocol? We don't care how you do it, as long as you answer properly and tell us the things that we want to know. Okay, if your AI doesn't fulfill it, then of course it's not going to do the job, right? Okay. Okay, any more? International students, what do you need to do? In your own country, you have to approach your own ethical committee or IRB in your own country and find out what they need. Okay, what they need. So you have to comply with what they need and submit to them to get the approval from them. Yeah? Okay. All right. Any more questions? If none, then I pass this back to Mr. Arif.
I think none for now. Okay. I think we came to the end of our session today. On behalf of School of Pedagogy Study, thank you, Dr. Associate Professor Dr. Chan Mayut, for being our speaker today. Very informative information on the ethics. So, to all the participants, I paste again the attendance and also the evaluation form for our seminar today. Please fill out both for us to send your e-certificate.
Oh, they get e-certificate, is it?
Yes. Okay, I think that's the
Okay,
end.
can we take a photograph?
Okay, before we left, can we have everybody to open the camera and just smile?
Turn on your camera so
Ah.
we can take a photograph.
Just smile. I have a few pages for me to screenshot. Okay. One. I need to see this somewhere. The page. Smile. I'm on the second page. Okay, the last page. Okay, that should be it. Thank you so much, Doctor. Thank you all for participating. And we have another session on Wednesday next week on triangulation. Okay. Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Arif. Thank you, everyone, for coming. See you next time.
Thank you, Doctor.
Have a nice day, Doctor.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Doctor.
Thank you. See you around.
Thank you, Doctor. Thank you, Arif.
Welcome, Ben Onoja.
Yeah.
Thank you, Doctor.